Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. Imagine this, you open your eyes and your pillow is scratchy hay poking through a stained linen sack. The ceiling above you is thatched full of little gaps where smoky morning light filters in right along with the smell of damp wood, animal droppings, and someone's feet. You sit up, bump your head on a low rafter, and oh hello, a chicken hops off your chest. Welcome to medieval times. You're officially awake and you're going to regret it. There's no phone, no coffee machine, no electricity buzzing faintly in the background. Just the distant sound of clanging pots, a pig grunting under the floorboards, and the unmistakable reality that you're wearing someone else's scratchy wool tunic and probably have lice. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post where you're watching from and what time it is. This one's going to be a wild, itchy ride. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on a lumpy straw mattress stuffed into a wooden frame. Well, mattress is generous. It's more of a glorified sack that has seen generations of peasants sleep, snore, and probably worse on it. There's a smoky haze in the room, not because someone's making toast, but because your home doesn't have a chimney. The fire pit in the middle is always smoldering, and the only ventilation is a small hole in the roof. You're already coughing. Welcome to your peasant cottage. The floor is packed earth. There are no separate rooms. You share your space with your entire family, parents, siblings, and a few barnyard friends. A goat blinks at you from the corner. You think about asking for privacy, then remember you don't have that anymore. You swing your feet to the ground and feel the chill immediately. Medieval England, or France, or whatever unlucky kingdom you landed in, isn't warm even in summer mornings. There's no glass in the windows, just wooden shutters, which means the breeze is free, and boy does it visit often. You step outside squinting. The sun is rising, and your eyes burn from the smoke and the light. The village is stirring. Hens cluck, a dog barks, someone's already shouting about a missing boot. You feel the dampness on your skin and realize that deodorant hasn't been invented yet, nor has toilet paper. The toilet, by the way, is either a wooden bench with a hole over a cesspit, or just a convenient bush. And if you're wondering where the soap is, there isn't any. People scrub themselves with sand or ashes, but don't expect scented suds. Bathing happens once a month. Maybe. Historians still argue whether medieval people really bathed that little, or if that's just a myth, but either way, it's not looking good for your hygiene. You wander toward the communal well to splash your face. A woman gives you a suspicious look. Your clothes, your hair, your general confusion, it all screams stranger. And strangers aren't exactly welcome. You're lucky no one's ringing the church bell to report a demon in disguise. As you explore the village, you notice something odd. The silence. No cars, no humming appliances, just the bleating of sheep and the occasional cart rolling over gravel. It's almost peaceful, until someone shouts at you to get back to work. You realize quickly that idleness isn't just frowned upon, it can get you in trouble. Everyone has a job, and everyone's job is hard. You're expected to pull your weight from dawn to dusk. Even kids get no slack. Welcome to Team Serf. You're also constantly dirty. Your feet are caked in mud, your hands feel rough already, and you've probably inhaled enough smoke for one lifetime. But nobody around you seems to mind. That's the thing, this is normal here. You're the weird one. Oh, and hope you're not allergic to animals because they're everywhere. Chickens in your bed, pigs in the alley, cows tied to doorposts. Animals mean food, milk, warmth, and manure, lots of manure. You're going to be stepping in it often. By mid-morning, the village green is bustling. A man is sharpening tools, a group of women are gossiping while spinning wool, and kids are throwing rocks at something vaguely rat-shaped. You learn that news travels by mouth, not phone. And gossip is the medieval internet. It spreads fast, is full of errors, and might get you in serious trouble. You're beginning to realize something crucial. You're completely dependent on others. There's no do-it-yourself survival here. You need the baker for bread, the blacksmith for tools, the healer for poultices, and the priest for your soul. It's like a subscription model, except you can't cancel ever. At noon, the church bell rings. You don't have a watch, but that bell is your clock. It marks your prayers, meals, work, shifts, and curfews. You don't decide your schedule, the bell does. And remember those dreams of escaping to the castle. Don't get your hopes up. Most peasants never leave their village. Roads are dangerous, robbers are real, and horses are for the rich. You're here to stay. So here you are a few hours into your first medieval day. You're dirty, sore, confused, hungry, and probably slightly traumatized. But hey, at least you're not dead yet. That's a pretty good start. Your stomach growls, loudly. And for once, it's not just hunger, it's confusion. You're used to cereal toast or maybe eggs and coffee. But here, breakfast is whatever the fire hasn't burned and the rats haven't stolen. You trudge back into the cottage where someone's stirring a pot with the same enthusiasm you'd reserve for stirring laundry. It's a thin broth, mostly onion water, and a hint of last night's turnip. Floating in it is a hard crust of brown bread, soaked just enough to chew without shattering your teeth. There's also a mug of something sour and suspiciously chunky, which you're told is ale. Morning ale. Yep, water isn't safe and fruit juice doesn't exist. Congratulations, you're now a breakfast drinker. No one's sitting at a table. There probably isn't a table. Meals are communal, simple, and eaten quickly, usually while squatting near the hearth. You're handed a piece of bread that might actually be older than you. It's called trencher bread, and yes, it can double as a plate. You're not sure if you're supposed to eat it or build with it. The bread's rough, made with barley and rye. Wheat is for the rich, and don't expect butter, it's too precious. Meat, maybe on feast days. Bacon exists, but pigs are too valuable to slaughter casually. If you ever taste pork, it'll be boiled gray and chewy enough to threaten your remaining teeth. And about those teeth, there's no toothbrush. The closest thing to dental hygiene is chewing herbs or rubbing ashes on your gums. Historians still debate whether medieval folks had better teeth than us, thanks to low sugar and no soda. But when things go bad, they go really bad. You're one cracked molar away from agony, and there's no dentist coming to save you. Around you, people eat in silence, except for the odd belch or cough. You notice something odd, everyone's leaning to the left. Why? Because knives are shared and people pass them clockwise. Forks don't exist yet, not for peasants. You eat with your fingers and you wipe them on your tunic, which you're now realizing doubles as napkin, hand towel, and sleeve. A child offers you a clump of cold porridge. You take it thankful even though it's gray and has a twig in it. Waste not, want not. In fact, everything is reused. Today's crust might be tomorrow's stew base. Bones are boiled twice, sometimes 3 times. You may laugh at TikTok's bone broth trend, but in medieval times it's just called soup. There's something else, meals are spiritual. Before eating, someone murmurs a short prayer. Afterward, they do it again. You're not just feeding your body, you're honoring your role in God's plan. Even Gruel has grace. Still hungry. Too bad. There's no second helping. Most peasants eat 2 meals a day, one in the late morning, another around dusk. That's it. And no snacks unless you count nibbling on wild sorrel stolen gooseberries, or possibly raw cabbage if no one's watching. Feeling thirsty again, ale is the safest bet. Not the hoppy, fizzy stuff you might be imagining. It's weak sour and brewed by someone who also washes laundry in the same pot. You sip it slowly. Your body doesn't thank you. Meanwhile, a neighbor is angrily picking worms out of her flour. You blink shocked. She shrugs normal. Flour isn't sifted in a sterile mill. It's stored in sacks that bugs love. You can try to pick them out, but most folks just bake them in. Adds protein. Suddenly you hear someone yell. A child is crying. A dog's barking. The baker's horse has kicked over a barrel. It's chaos, but nobody seems panicked. This is breakfast energy in the 1300s, noisy, smoky, a little bit dangerous. Then comes the flatulence. Loud, unapologetic, and unaccompanied by shame. People's diets are fiber-heavy and meat-light. Your stomach rumbles again, not from hunger, but fear. You are becoming one with the medieval digestive cycle. Still chewing your last bite of trench bread, you wander outside. A woman calls after you, waving a moldy apple. You think she's offering it. Nope, she's selling it. Food isn't free even among neighbors. Barter is common, but kindness comes at a price. And then you spot something odd. A man pouring milk into a hollowed-out log. Butter churning, someone explains. You watch as he pounds it rhythmically with a wooden paddle. Butter is gold here. So are eggs, if you're lucky enough to keep your chickens from being stolen. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly malnourished or just differently nourished. They were lean strong from labor and often surprisingly long-lived if they survived childhood and didn't get the plague, that is. Oh, and there's no menu. You eat what's available. Seasons rule everything. If it's Lent, you're fasting. If it's Advent, same deal. If it's winter, well, let's just say you'll get creative with salted fish and root vegetables. As breakfast winds down, someone tosses leftover crusts to a mangy dog. He snarls at a goose who also wants a bite. No one intervenes. Nature takes its course on the floor, in the soup, and in your stomach. You lick your fingers. It's not satisfying, but it's survival. And you've made it to midday without keeling over. Just 13 more hours to go. The moment you set your empty trencher down, someone claps you on the shoulder and mutters something that roughly translates to, "Enough lazing, get to work." There's no second breakfast. No post-meal scrolling time. You're a peasant now, and the village needs your sweat. You're handed a tool, an awkward wooden hoe with a cracked handle, and pointed toward a distant field. That's your job. That's everyone's job. Farming isn't seasonal here, it's constant. You'll plow weeds, sow, harvest, chop, carry, and repeat. If you don't eat. Simple as that. So off you go, feet sinking into the muddy path, passing fences made of bent sticks, and the occasional goat trying to chew your tunic. The sun is up now, and it's already hot. There's no hat, no sunscreen. Your neck is going to burn. Historians still argue whether medieval farmers developed natural resistance to the sun, or just accepted early onset wrinkles as part of the deal. The field is a lumpy patch of earth worked with more hope than precision. Forget neat rows, these crops are doing their best to survive alongside you. Wheat, barley, maybe some beans. If you're lucky, a patch of leeks. You bend down to pull weeds, and your back instantly protests. There's no ergonomic design here, no brakes. no union. Oh, and don't expect wages. You're not a hired hand, you're a serf. That's a medieval word meaning legally not a slave, but don't get any ideas. You're bound to the land. You can't move, can't marry outside the village, and can't sell your labor elsewhere. Your lord owns everything, the land, the crops, and technically, your productivity. You work his fields first, then your own, if you even have one, and if you get injured, tough luck. As you drag a sack of compost across the ridge, you step in something that squelches and might once have been alive. No one warns you. You just wipe it on a tuft of grass and move on. Welcome to medieval composting. Everything is reused. Manure is gold. Dead rats are, well, technically biodegradable. You glance around. Other villagers are working with grim efficiency. No one talks unless it's necessary. No one complains aloud. There's a rhythm to this life, and you're the out-of-sync note. People notice. An old man chuckles as you nearly drop a bushel of grain. Soft hands, he says. He's right. Your hands already feel like they've aged 10 years, and it's barely past noon. Thirsty. Good luck. There's a wooden bucket near a stream, but the water's cloudy. Still, it's what they've got. No filtration. Just hope and immunity. You drink a little and instantly question your life choices. Someone calls you over to stack firewood. You think this'll be easier. It isn't. The logs are wet, heavy, and full of splinters. One rolls off the pile and lands on your foot. You yelp. No one reacts. Injuries are just part of the job. You limp on. You pass a woman pulling a cart of rocks. She's 8 months pregnant. No one tells her to rest. You see a child, maybe 7, shoveling animal dung. That's normal. Medieval childhood is short and labor-filled. You're considered an adult by 12, and if you're not pulling your weight by 10, you're lazy. A bell tolls in the distance. It's not lunchtime. It's a call to prayer. Work pauses for a few minutes as everyone bows their heads. You try to follow along, mumbling a Latin prayer you don't understand. Someone eyes you suspiciously again. Faith isn't optional. A wrong word here can brand you a heretic or worse. After prayer, it's back to the grind. Literally. You're sent to the mill to grind grain. It's a back-breaking job. You turn the heavy wheel with another villager, your hands slipping on the wooden handle. You're sweating dizzy and sure that your shoulder just popped slightly out of place. No one cares. Bread doesn't make itself. You start to wonder what would happen if you refused to work. Bad idea. That brings punishment, fines, extra labor, maybe even time in the stocks. Laziness isn't tolerated, and your fellow villagers wouldn't support you. Everyone suffers when someone slacks. And then finally, a moment of mercy. A younger boy brings you a piece of cheese. It's hard, salty, and smells like old socks. You nearly cry with gratitude. You eat it slowly, savoring every crumb. It's the most flavor you've had all day. As the sun begins to dip, the work shifts slightly. Tools are collected, animals are herded, and fires are stoked for the evening. But you're not done. There's still firewood to chop, repairs to make, wool to card, and water to carry. You glance at your filthy hands, your aching knees, and the sunburn crawling up your neck. This isn't just hard work. It's endless. Every single day. There are no weekends. Sundays are for church, not rest. And holidays mean fasting and more prayer, not vacation. Still, there's a strange rhythm to it. The clack of the mill, the rustle of leaves, the distant bleating of sheep. It becomes a kind of music, a tired, dusty symphony of survival. And today, somehow, you've made it through without collapsing. You head back to the village, trailing behind the others, sore and sunburned stomach, growling again. And as the shadows grow long and smoke rises from chimneys, you realize this work isn't something you do in medieval times. It's what you are. You're filthy, your shoulders are screaming, and your skin feels like it's been scraped with a cheese grater. Naturally, you're thinking, time for a hot bath, right? Wrong. So wrong. There is no bathroom, no tub, no running water. And the closest thing to soap is a lump of animal fat mixed with ashes and lye rough enough to strip paint. If you're hoping for bubbles and candles, forget it. You're about to learn what personal hygiene wasn't in the Middle Ages. You ask someone about washing, and they give you a look like you just asked to kiss a goat on the mouth. Bathing too often, they explain, is dangerous. It opens your skin to the miasma's bad air that brings sickness. Historians still argue whether people genuinely believed that water spread disease or if the practice just faded with the collapse of Roman baths and plumbing. But here's what you do. Get a small wooden bowl, cold water from the well, and a rag that smells suspiciously like stew. That's your bath. Maybe once a week if you're rich. More likely it's just a quick rinse of hands and face, and only if you've been touching something truly revolting. Which ironically is everything. Your teeth not brushed. Your hair caked in soot, and God knows what. Your nails filled with dirt that's older than the Black Death. If you want to freshen up, chew some mint or sage leaves. Or rub your armpits with vinegar. Don't ask where it came from. There are bathhouses in cities, sure. Communal ones. Men, women, neighbors, sometimes monks, all soaking in tepid grayish water that hasn't been changed since last Thursday. If you're lucky, you'll get in early. If not, you're swimming in the bacteria stew. And don't get too comfortable by the late Middle Ages bathhouses get associated with sin and sex, especially in the eyes of the church. So unless you're aiming for a side eye from the parish priest, it's better to stay dirty. At some point you notice the sheer smell of things. Yourself. Other people. The animals. The privy. The food. The lack of separation between all of the above. It's overwhelming and completely normal. You walk past the communal latrine, a wooden shack over a pit. There's no toilet paper, just moss hay or a communal cloth nicknamed the bum rag. You silently promise never to complain about single ply again. Fun fact, in some larger towns, there were gong farmers, men paid to dig out human waste from cesspits. They did it at night sometimes, waist deep, carrying buckets through the streets to dump the waste outside town walls. Fringe fact, the pay was surprisingly decent. Risk of disease high. Respect none. You decide to find a stream to splash your face. The water's cold, clear, and refreshing, until you see someone upstream rinsing out laundry and dumping chicken feathers. So much for natural and pure. You take a cautious sip and immediately regret it. It's not that people don't care about hygiene, they just see it differently. Cleanliness isn't about sparkling skin or lemon-scented everything. It's about modesty, spiritual purity, and not catching the bad air. If you wash your feet, that's practical. Wash your face, socially acceptable. But strip down and scrub your whole body. Suspicious behavior. Possibly sinful. As dusk settles, you're invited to join a group sitting outside grooming each other. Not with combs, with fingers. They're delousing one another, picking out nits and fleas with the same casual air you'd reserve for checking your phone. You try not to gag. Someone picks a flea from your collar and crushes it with their thumb. You'll get used to it, they say. You won't, but you nod politely. There are some attempts at cleanliness. Herbs like lavender and rosemary are stuffed into tunics to cover body odor. People change into fresh clothes, well, fresh-ish once a week. Women wash menstrual cloths by hand. Babies are cleaned with rags and honey water. Monks might wash more frequently, but mostly their feet and hands. As you slump back into the cottage for the night, your skin sticky with dried sweat and dust, you begin to understand something fundamental. Being clean is a luxury. And here, luxury is for nobles, not peasants. You curl up on your straw sack again, your clothes still on because changing is pointless when everything smells the same. A mouse runs past your face. You sigh. You may be exhausted, overworked, and covered in grime, but you've survived another layer of medieval life. Tomorrow you'll be dirtier still, but that's fine. Dirt means you're still alive. And honestly, you're starting to blend in. You're filthy, your shoulders are screaming, and your skin feels like it's been scraped with a cheese grater. Naturally, you're thinking, time for a hot bath, right? Wrong. So wrong. There is no bathroom, no tub, no running water. And the closest thing to soap is a lump of animal fat mixed with ashes and lye rough enough to strip paint. If you're hoping for bubbles and candles, forget it. You're about to learn what personal hygiene wasn't in the Middle Ages. You ask someone about washing, and they give you a look like you just asked to kiss a goat on the mouth. Bathing too often, they explain, is dangerous. It opens your skin to the miasma's bad air that brings sickness. Historians still argue whether people genuinely believed that water spread disease or if the practice just faded with the collapse of Roman baths and plumbing. But here's what you do. Get a small wooden bowl, cold water from the well, and a rag that smells suspiciously like stew. That's your bath. Maybe once a week if you're rich. More likely it's just a quick rinse of hands and face, and only if you've been touching something truly revolting. Which ironically is everything. Your teeth not brushed. Your hair caked in soot, and God knows what. Your nails filled with dirt that's older than the Black Death. If you want to freshen up, chew some mint or sage leaves, or rub your armpits with vinegar. Don't ask where it came from. There are bathhouses in cities, sure. Communal ones. Men, women, neighbors, sometimes monks, all soaking in tepid grayish water that hasn't been changed since last Thursday. If you're lucky, you'll get in early. If not, you're swimming in the bacteria stew. And don't get too comfortable by the late Middle Ages bathhouses get associated with sin and sex, especially in the eyes of the church. So unless you're aiming for a side eye from the parish priest, it's better to stay dirty. At some point you notice the sheer smell of things. Yourself. Other people. The animals. The privy. The food. The lack of separation between all of the above. It's overwhelming and completely normal. You walk past the communal latrine, a wooden shack over a pit. There's no toilet paper, just moss hay or a communal cloth nicknamed the bum rag. You silently promise never to complain about single ply again. Fun fact, in some larger towns, there were gong farmers, men paid to dig out human waste from cesspits. They did it at night sometimes, waist deep, carrying buckets through the streets to dump the waste outside town walls. Fringe fact, the pay was surprisingly decent. Risk of disease high. Respect none. You decide to find a stream to splash your face. The water's cold, clear, and refreshing, until you see someone upstream rinsing out laundry and dumping chicken feathers. so much for natural and pure. You take a cautious sip and immediately regret it. It's not that people don't care about hygiene, they just see it differently. Cleanliness isn't about sparkling skin or lemon-scented everything. It's about modesty, spiritual purity, and not catching the bad air. If you wash your feet, that's practical. Wash your face, socially acceptable. But strip down and scrub your whole body, suspicious behavior. Possibly sinful. As dusk settles, you're invited to join a group sitting outside grooming each other. Not with combs, with fingers. They're delousing one another, picking out nits and fleas with the same casual air you'd reserve for checking your phone. You try not to gag. Someone picks a flea from your collar and crushes it with their thumb. You'll get used to it, they say. You won't, but you nod politely. There are some attempts at cleanliness. Herbs like lavender and rosemary are stuffed into tunics to cover body odor. People change into fresh clothes, well, fresh-ish once a week. Women wash menstrual cloths by hand. Babies are cleaned with rags and honey water. Monks might wash more frequently, but mostly their feet and hands. As you slump back into the cottage for the night, your skin sticky with dried sweat and dust, you begin to understand something fundamental: being clean is a luxury. And here, luxury is for nobles, not peasants. You curl up on your straw sack again, your clothes still on because changing is pointless when everything smells the same. A mouse runs past your face. You sigh. You may be exhausted, overworked, and covered in grime, but you've survived another layer of medieval life. Tomorrow you'll be dirtier still, but that's fine. Dirt means you're still alive. And honestly, you're starting to blend in. You're just starting to nod off views. Half-closed muscles finally uncoiling when you hear it. The dull clomp of hooves, the rhythmic clang of iron on stone, and the unmistakable clatter of entitlement. That, dear traveler, is the sound of your landlord arriving. No, not the calls once a month for rent kind. This is your lord, the local baron or knight who owns the manor, the land, and by extension, yes, you. And he's here for one reason: taxes. You stumble out of your cottage trying to look alert and not, peasanty. A group of villagers has already gathered in the clearing, clutching sacks of grain, bundles of wool, or a terrified chicken or two. These are in-kind taxes, meaning you don't pay in coins, you pay in whatever you can scrounge up from your already bare survival. The Lord himself is up on a fine horse, armored boots, shining velvet cloak, fluttering unnecessarily. His men are behind him, chainmail, jangling, smirking with the kind of confidence only people with swords and clean fingernails can afford. One of them writes things down in a ledger. You don't know what it says because you, like most peasants, can't read. And no, there's no secret night school waiting around the corner. As the line shuffles forward, you're told to give up a portion of your barley and some eggs. You hesitate because, well, that's your food for next week. Too bad. If you don't hand it over, you could face a fine, lose access to your tiny strip of land, or worse, be charged with theft from your lord's estate, which is confusing since you're the one who planted and harvested it. But logic isn't really the vibe here. This is called the manorial system, and it's not just an economic structure, it's your whole reality. You don't own land, you borrow it. You don't earn a wage, you owe labor, and in return, the Lord promises protection, which is vague, infrequent, and mostly means you get trampled slightly less during Viking raids. The taxes don't stop with food. You might owe work 2 corvée labor, which means being pulled from your own survival tasks to build the Lord's fences, repair his roads, or clean out his fish pond. And don't think you're exempt because you've already worked 12 hours in the fields today. That's adorable. You glance around. Everyone looks tense but practiced. They've done this before. Generations have. You notice a young woman being shorted on the barley scale, and her protest is swiftly shut down with a glare. That's feudal justice, swift, biased, and entirely one-sided. To top it off, there's tithing, a mandatory 10% of your income, red food to the church. Yes, the spiritual side also wants a piece of your struggling pie. That's two institutions with infinite power and zero mercy standing over your dinner plate. Still, there's a strange pageantry to the whole thing. Children watch wide-eyed. A fiddler plays a few notes in the background, maybe to lighten the mood, or maybe because he's been paid in onions. A priest murmurs a blessing that smells faintly of mildew and guilt. The Lord waves magnanimously from his horse as if this is all very reasonable. It isn't. You learn that rent can come in weird forms. Sometimes it's firewood. Sometimes it's labor. In one town, you might owe a goose per year. In another, you owe 3 days a month repairing the Lord's mill. And woe betide you if you try to get clever. Historians still debate whether some peasants used stones inside grain sacks to cheat on quotas if true. The punishment was steep fines, humiliation, or a good old-fashioned whipping. Once the taxes are collected, the Lord might stick around a little. Maybe hear disputes, hand out small favors, or throw a bone to keep the illusion of benevolence alive. Justice, such as it is, takes place on the green. Someone's accused of stealing turnips. Someone else claims his neighbor's cow looked at him funny. The Lord or his steward listens, nods, and hands down a ruling that may or may not make sense. The rich don't go to jail. The poor. You get the stocks, the pillory, or a healthy public shaming. There's no appeals process, just mud and misery, and probably some laughter from the kids. As the sun dips lower, the Lord finally rides off, cloak flapping, horse leaving hoof craters in the road. His men follow, taking your best eggs with them. The villagers scatter like leaves in the wind, muttering, some relieved, others grumbling. You walk back toward your cottage, holding what's left of your barley, already calculating how you're going to stretch it. It doesn't seem fair, because it isn't. But that's not new. The Lord has a castle. You have splinters. That's feudalism, baby. The one comfort, at least he didn't take the chicken. Yet, you're still reeling from your encounter with feudal economics. When the bells begin to ring again, slow, steady, unmistakable. It's not time for another meal. It's time for your soul to check in. Religion in the Middle Ages isn't a once-a-week thing. It's the center of life, the sun around which everything else orbits. Time is measured not by clocks, but by church bells, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline. Even the hours have Latin names. You can't escape it, nor should you try. Everyone is watching. The village church isn't some grand cathedral. It's a squat stone building with warped wooden pews, faded wall paintings of saints and sinners, and the faint smell of damp moss and wax. You duck inside, removing your cap, like you've seen others do, and instantly feel like you're in a place where whispering is illegal. The priest is already there, in a rough wool cassock, muttering Latin over a candle. You have no idea what he's saying, but everyone else bows their heads. So you do too. It's not about understanding, it's about submitting. Religion rules everything. You're born baptized, married, punished, and buried under the eye of the church. There's a saint for every sickness, a feast for every calendar day, and a superstition for every inconvenience. You're not just afraid of bad harvests. You're afraid it's God's punishment for something you thought last Thursday. A rooster crows mid-prayer. No one flinches. You're beginning to learn that spiritual life and village life bleed into each other constantly. The sacred and the mundane are roommates. You step outside and spot a few villagers bowing toward a shrine with a candle and a wooden cross. One woman leaves a hunk of bread, an offering maybe, or a bribe for the saints. Historians still argue whether most medieval people were truly pious or simply terrified of eternal damnation. It's likely both. You're told to attend Mass tomorrow, no exceptions. It's in Latin. The priest's back will be turned to the congregation. You'll stand the whole time except when you kneel on the cold stone floor. No pew cushions here. Forget hymn books, too. You don't sing, you endure. And don't even think about skipping. The church has power. Real power. They control land law knowledge. The priest isn't just your spiritual guide. He's a social authority. He hears confessions, officiates, marriages, judges, disputes, and whispers rumors in the Lord's ear. Displease him, and your life can unravel faster than a badly spun flax tunic. You walk past the churchyard and notice the graves. No neat rows, just wooden markers or stones, some already crumbling. People are buried close proximity to the church means proximity to salvation. You wonder where you'd end up. Probably in the back, by the chickens. Night starts to fall. That's when the fear creeps in. Not just of wolves or outlaws, but of demons, spirits, witches. You hear someone whisper that a woman in the next village gives birth with no midwife. Must be the devil's child. Another says a cow stopped giving milk after a man looked at it wrong. That's a curse, obviously. There's no scientific reasoning here, only religious and supernatural cause and effect. If your crops fail, it's not the weather, it's sin. If your child falls ill, it's not infection, it's possession. And the solution, prayer, relics, and sometimes exorcism. You're told that some churches own bones of saints or vials of sacred dust. Touching one might heal you or kill you, who knows? As you help light the cottage candles, you hear a low chanting echoing across the fields. Monks from a nearby monastery. You didn't even realize they were that close. Their lives are stricter cloistered behind stone walls, spent copying scripture, tending gardens, and occasionally making beer. A peaceful life, perhaps, but also one of silence, poverty, and self-flagellation. You consider signing up just to avoid more farm labor. Then you remember the vow of celibacy and move on. The cottage grows dimmer. A crucifix is nailed above the hearth. A bundle of herbs hangs beside it to ward off spirits. You don't know which is supposed to do more work. Someone mumbles a bedtime prayer. You're starting to do it too, even though you're not sure what it means. You close your eyes and think you haven't sinned. You haven't cursed, stolen, or lied. Unless, maybe when you kicked that bucket and thought something rude. Better pray again, just in case. Because in the medieval world, your soul is never off duty. You wake up with a throbbing headache, a sore throat, and a nose that won't stop running. Great, your first medieval cold. But don't expect chicken soup and tissues. There's no medicine cabinet here, no pharmacy, and certainly no calls to a friendly family doctor. Instead, you're dragged to the village healer, a woman with a crow feather in her braid and a pouch of dried herbs that smells like compost and cat pee. Her hands are stained green from nettle juice. You sit down on a stool and she starts examining your tongue, your breath, your humors. Ah, yes, welcome to medieval medicine. A practice less rooted in science and more in astrology, superstition, and bodily fluids. The human body, they believe, is made of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you're sick, it's because those humors are out of balance. You've got too much phlegm, obviously. The cure: possibly a poultice made of garlic and pig fat, or being bled. No, seriously. You're told to lie back while someone, either a physician, if you're lucky, or more likely, the barber ties off your arm and produces a sharp blade. They let out a few ounces of blood to rebalance your system. You nearly faint, and not just from the blood loss. And here's the kicker: you're paying for this. Not with coins, you don't have any, but maybe with firewood, a hen, or a favor. The healer nods wisely and tells you to sleep near onions tonight. They draw out the sickness. Historians still argue whether these practices were total nonsense or just misunderstood herbalism mixed with a dash of trial and error. Some of the herbs do work. Others just make your breath worse. You ask about physicians, actual ones. Turns out there are trained doctors, but only in cities and only for those with deep pockets and noble blood. They read from dusty Latin medical texts and diagnose illnesses using astrology charts. If you were born under the wrong star sign, you might be in trouble before the diagnosis even starts. You also hear whispers of university-trained surgeons in places like Salerno or Paris. But again, they're not coming to your village. And you don't want to see a surgeon anyway. Their tools are hot iron saws and forceps that look more like torture instruments. Anesthesia. A stick to bite down on. You shudder. Back in the village, the cures keep coming. Someone suggests tying a dead mole around your neck to ward off fever. Another says to boil nettles and rub the liquid on your chest. Someone else recommends swallowing a live spider wrapped in dough. You're starting to feel sicker. The healer finally gives you a drink. It's warm, bitter, and tastes like something scraped from a garden after a storm. You ask what's in it. She smiles and says, "A little of everything." You really don't want to know. What's more terrifying is the supernatural angle. If your illness gets worse, people may start to talk. Maybe you looked at someone wrong. Maybe you walked past a fairy ring without apologizing. Maybe you've been cursed. In that case, your illness isn't natural. It's a punishment or an enchantment. Someone suggests you visit the local priest instead. He might perform a blessing or an exorcism. Yes, for a cough. The line between medicine and religion is paper thin here. If you're very unlucky, people might suspect you of being the cause of illness, a carrier of bad luck, a whisper of witchcraft. You hear about a woman in the next village who cured her neighbor's baby with a root and milk poultice. A week later, she was accused of being in league with demons. Burned, maybe. Banished, likely. The details are fuzzy, but the fear is clear. Despite it all, you begin to recover. Whether it's the garlic paste, the onion fumes, or your immune system finally kicking in, you're upright within a few days. The healer beams proudly. "See," she says, "the mole worked." You smile weakly and avoid asking questions. You limp back to work, paler and lighter, but alive. That's considered a full recovery. There's no rehab, no vitamins, You're expected to get back to digging, sewing, or hauling like nothing happened. If you can walk, you can work. That's the rule. As you pass the church, you notice a small shrine with candles for the sick. Some are still lit. Some aren't. There's a child coughing nearby and a mother rubbing mustard on his feet. The air smells like herbs, smoke, and desperation. You realize then medicine in the Middle Ages isn't about curing. It's about surviving. Or at least making people feel like they're doing something while nature takes its course. You're lucky. This time, you're just starting to feel human again when you hear it bells. Loud, rhythmic, urgent. At first you think it's another call to prayer. But no, there's panic in the sound. Villagers stream past you murmuring prayers, clutching loved ones. You catch scattered words, fever sores, the pestilence. Uh-oh, you don't know it yet. But you've stumbled right into the most feared chapter of medieval life, the plague. It starts with whispers. Someone in a nearby hamlet died suddenly. Then someone else. Soon, whole families vanish overnight. You learn to dread coughing boils and rumors. Nobody knows exactly what causes it: bad air. A punishment from God, may be foreigners or cats, or those odd women who live near the woods. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages truly understood that the Black Death was contagious. Some towns tried quarantines, closing gates, burning clothing, or avoiding strangers. Others leaned into religious processions, whipping themselves in the streets to atone for collective sin. Unfortunately, the latter option often made things worse. Within days, your own village changes. The streets grow silent. Doors are marked with soot crosses. Food stalls close. The local lord retreats to his estate, locking his gates behind him. You're told to carry posies and lavender to ward off the bad air. You tuck a sprig behind your ear and try not to breathe too deeply. And then it hits. A child collapses in the fields. An old woman starts coughing blood. People disappear into their homes and don't come out again. A cart rolls through once a day with a man calling, "Bring out your dead." It's not just a Monty Python joke. You watch someone drag a wrapped bundle to the edge of the street and leave it there, eyes glassy. You've never been more terrified. The local priest holds a hasty sermon outdoors. He tells you it's the wrath of God, that only through confession and repentance can the village be spared. So everyone lines up, sobbing, whispering sins they'd never admit otherwise. Meanwhile, the graveyard swells like a rising tide. They can't dig fast enough, but you're one of the lucky ones again. For whatever reason, you don't get sick. Maybe you've already had it. Maybe your immune system is stubborn. Or maybe your habit of avoiding everyone and everything since your cold saved you. Modern historians suspect fleas from rats carried the bacteria, but back then the cause remained a mystery. Still, the trauma lingers. The survivors are changed. The village loses a third of its people. Children are suddenly orphaned. Crops wither in fields no one has the strength to harvest. Prices rise because no one wants to sell grain to a dying town. And the work piles up. But something strange happens too. You matter more now. Labor is scarce. For the first time, people start to demand wages. Peasants who once toiled in silence begin asking questions. Why do nobles get to hide while others die? Why should tithes still be paid when there's no one left to collect them? The world isn't quite ready for revolution, but the seeds are there. Historians point to this as a turning point, a moment when the rigid feudal system starts to crack under pressure. You can feel it in the air. Change is brewing even if you don't know the word Renaissance yet. Meanwhile, grief becomes part of daily life. People tattoo small crosses on their wrists in remembrance. Children learn silence. Survivors keep garlic in their shoes just in case. You see less laughter, fewer weddings. The village has aged in weeks. One morning you walk by the church and notice a statue has been defaced. The saint's eyes are scratched out, as if someone couldn't bear their blank stares anymore. The priest doesn't mention it. Instead, he offers you a job cleaning the nave, burning old linens, digging a few more graves. You take it. It's grim work, but it comes with a little bread and a quiet place to sleep. And fewer people means fewer witnesses when you sneak a second bowl of porridge. Eventually the bell stops ringing. The plague moves on. Life limps forward. But you'll never forget those weeks. The fear, the smell, the uncertainty. You now know that in the Middle Ages, death doesn't knock, it kicks the door in, and then sometimes just walks away. One night, lying on a straw mat, you wonder what if it comes back. And yes, spoiler alert, it will. You've survived famine, filth, and plague, but now comes the quietest threat of all nightfall. You probably didn't notice it before, but in the absence of electric light, medieval night feels almost cosmic. You blink up at the sky and see more stars than you ever imagined, hanging like scattered silver coins across a velvet black. Sounds peaceful, right? Wrong. Out here, when the sun dips behind the hills, everything changes. The village becomes a shadow play of looming shapes and sudden unplaceable noises. Without torches, moonlight, or a blazing hearth, there's no soft glow, just encroaching dark. You try stepping outside after sunset, and within seconds, your vision narrows. Your skin prickles, and every twig snap might be something with teeth. Back in your time, you feared deadlines or online arguments. Now you fear wolves. And not just wolves, there are whispers of worse. Creatures called barghests that hunt travelers. Witches that ride goats backward through the sky. Restless spirits of unburied plague victims. These tales aren't just spooky fun, they're survival warnings. Medieval folks believed in the dark, and for good reason. Wolves, bandits, and disease didn't care whether you believed in them or not. You learn quickly, people go inside early. As dusk deepens, doors slam shut, shutters creak closed, and the village tightens like a clenched fist. The bravest might head to the alehouse, but even that closes before midnight. After that, it's just you and whatever's out there. Your own home isn't much comfort either. The fire's died. The straw mattress is crawling with things you really don't want to name. You wrap yourself in a woolen blanket, rough as sandpaper, and try to stay warm. But then you hear it, a low howl, far off. Then another closer. Wolves. They've been circling the edge of the fields lately, drawn by the scent of decay. You press yourself against the wooden wall, holding your breath. The sheep in the pen start to bleat nervously. Then you hear growling, a thud, a yelp, then silence. Nature doesn't stage dramatic battles. It just ends things. You stay still until morning. Historians still argue whether wolf attacks were common or just overblown in folklore. But to you here now, it doesn't matter. The fear is real. Whether you're more likely to meet a hungry pack or just your imagination, you decide not to test it. The next day you find claw marks on the outside of the door. Something sniffed around last night. You swallow hard and offer a silent thanks that your latch held. The villagers offer advice, most of it wildly contradictory. Hang garlic by the windows. Sprinkle salt around the threshold. Leave bread out for passing spirits so they won't bother you. You try all of it because honestly, who's taking chances? Still, night must fall again. It always does. And you start to realize that sleep in the Middle Ages isn't a peaceful escape, it's a gamble. Especially when you find out about the two sleeps. Yeah, that's a thing. Turns out most people didn't sleep through the night. Instead, they had a first sleep right after sunset, then woke up around midnight to pray, check the animals, or even wander next door for a chat, then they'd sleep again until dawn. It was weirdly communal, like the whole village was part of an odd circadian relay race. You give it a try. After your first sleep, you sit by the hearth poking embers and listening to owls. It's strangely calming once you stop expecting death around every corner. You even manage to nod off again before the roosters start their morning announcements. Still, even peaceful nights have a price. No proper windows means no insulation. If it's raining or windy, your entire body aches by morning. The roof leaks. Smoke from the hearth clings to everything, including your lungs. You now understand why people in old paintings look perpetually exhausted. But there are moments, just moments where it's almost magical. You step outside just before sunrise. Mist hugs the earth like a sleeping dog. The fields are quiet, save for one early rising milkmaid singing off-key. The fear is gone. The wolves are gone. The stars are fading, replaced by a soft, pink dawn. And for just a second, you think maybe I could survive this. And then a rooster shrieks directly into your soul. You've survived famine, filth, and plague, but now comes the quietest threat of all, nightfall. You probably didn't notice it before, but in the absence of electric light, medieval night feels almost cosmic. You blink up at the sky and see more stars than you ever imagined hanging like scattered silver coins across a velvet black. Sounds peaceful, right? Wrong. Out here, when the sun dips behind the hills, everything changes. The village becomes a shadow play of looming shapes and sudden, unplaceable noises. Without torches, moonlight, or a blazing hearth, there's no soft glow, just encroaching dark. You try stepping outside after sunset, and within seconds, your vision narrows, your skin prickles, and every twig snap might be something with teeth. Back in your time, you feared deadlines or online arguments. Now you fear wolves. And not just wolves, there are whispers of worse. Creatures called barghests that hunt travelers. Witches that ride goats backward through the sky. Restless spirits of unburied plague victims. These tales aren't just spooky fun. They're survival warnings. Medieval folks believed in the dark, and for good reason. Wolves, bandits, and disease didn't care whether you believed in them or not. You learn quickly, people go inside early. As dusk deepens, doors slam shut. Shutters creak closed, and the village tightens like a clenched fist. The bravest might head to the alehouse, but even that closes before midnight. After that, it's just you and whatever's out there. Your own home isn't much comfort either. The fire's died. The straw mattress is crawling with things you really don't want to name. You wrap yourself in a woolen blanket, rough as sandpaper, and try to stay warm. But then you hear it, a low howl, far off. Then another closer. Wolves. They've been circling the edge of the fields lately, drawn by the scent of decay. You press yourself against the wooden wall, holding your breath. The sheep in the pen start to bleat nervously. Then you hear growling, a thud, a yelp, then silence. Nature doesn't stage dramatic battles. It just ends things. You stay still until morning. Historians still argue whether wolf attacks were common or just overblown in folklore. But to you here now, it doesn't matter. The fear is real. Whether you're more likely to meet a hungry pack or just your imagination, you decide not to test it. The next day, you find claw marks on the outside of the door. Something sniffed around last night. You swallow hard and offer a silent thanks that your latch held. The villagers offer advice, most of it wildly contradictory. Hang garlic by the windows. Sprinkle salt around the threshold. Leave bread out for passing spirits so they won't bother you. You try all of it because honestly, who's taking chances? Still, night must fall again. It always does. And you start to realize that sleep in the Middle Ages isn't a peaceful escape, it's a gamble. Especially when you find out about the two sleeps. Yeah, that's a thing. Turns out most people didn't sleep through the night. Instead, they had a first sleep right after sunset, then woke up around midnight to pray, check the animals, or even wander next door for a chat. Then they'd sleep again until dawn. It was weirdly communal, like the whole village was part of an odd circadian relay race. You give it a try. After your first sleep, you sit by the hearth poking embers and listening to owls. It's strangely calming once you stop expecting death around every corner. You even manage to nod off again before the roosters start their morning announcements. Still, even peaceful nights have a price. No proper windows means no insulation. If it's raining or windy, your entire body aches by morning. The roof leaks. Smoke from the hearth clings to everything, including your lungs. You now understand why people in old paintings look perpetually exhausted. But there are moments, just moments, where it's almost magical. You step outside just before sunrise. Mist hugs the earth like a sleeping dog. The fields are quiet save for one early rising milkmaid singing off key. The fear is gone. The wolves are gone. The stars are fading, replaced by a soft pink dawn. And for just a second, you think maybe I could survive this. And then a rooster shrieks directly into your soul. Word count 178. Awaiting continue. Ban Danoi continue. Chat GPT Danoi section 10. You wake up coughing. At first, you assume it's just smoke from last night's fire, or the ever-present damp in the cottage. But then you hear it others coughing. Not just a little throat clearing. We're talking deep, gut-wrenching hacks that make you wince through the thin walls. Welcome to your medieval pandemic. Someone in the village is sick. Really sick. And because your home has no running water, no ventilation, and no concept of quarantine, you're next in line. The town's healer, who may or may not also sell love charms and lucky bones, mentions bad air and recommends stuffing rosemary and lavender in your nostrils. It doesn't help. The coughing gets worse, the fever spreads, and within days, people stop opening their doors. The street goes silent, except for the wails of the sick. You've heard of the plague, of course. The Black Death looms large in modern imagination, and this might be one of its returns, what historians call a recurrence. They still argue whether it was always Yersinia pestis or a cocktail of pathogens amplified by poverty and rats. But here and now, it doesn't matter. You just know it's terrifying. Symptoms appear fast. Swollen lumps under arms and groins called buboes, blackening skin, high fever, vomiting. Someone down the road tried lancing a bubo. He died screaming. You meanwhile try to disappear. You stop eating communally. You refuse water from strangers. You even scrape together some money for a charm, a dried toad sewn into a pouch and tied around your neck. It smells awful. You wear it anyway. Here's the kicker. No one really knows what's going on. Some say it's a punishment from God. Others blame bad humors, and a few whisper that it's caused by foreigners or maybe even witches. A local woman is accused of poisoning the well just because her cat survived. You try to stay out of it, but that's hard when suspicion is as contagious as disease. One man begins carrying a nosegay of herbs and sings psalms while walking in circles. Another straps leeches to his own eyelids, claiming they'll suck out the sickness. A third just wanders into the forest and never returns. You're told to pray, a lot. And hey, religion is comfort. The church bell tolls constantly, sometimes for mass, more often for funerals. People kneel and chant the Dies Irae, trembling in candlelight, as they beg for mercy. Still, the death toll climbs. The gravedigger can't keep up, so they start digging mass pits. It's not dramatic, it's just necessary. The worst part, you start getting used to it. You no longer flinch when you hear someone cry out in the night. You start measuring your own body, checking your temperature with your hand, wondering if that ache in your stomach is just hunger or something else. And yet by some miracle, or maybe just good luck, you don't fall sick. You watch as entire households vanish. One cottage is simply boarded up, the stench too overwhelming. A priest passes through swinging incense and muttering Latin so fast it sounds like a chant. Children stop playing. The fair is canceled. Even the animals seem quieter. One day the healer returns to your door. She squints at you, then says the fever seems to be passing, that you were spared. Why? No one knows. You'll never know. Some say survivors were touched by grace, others claim they were just the ones with slightly better immune systems. You breathe easier. Literally, slowly life creaks back into place. Doors open. Chickens cluck again. Someone laughs awkwardly. A boy chases a hoop down the road. The air still feels heavy, but the silence has broken. You survived your first epidemic. And now you never take a healthy day for granted. Not here, but don't relax too much. Medieval medicine is still medieval. Doctors, if you can call them that, continue to wear beaked masks stuffed with herbs and carry canes for poking at the sick from a distance. The masks look creepy, like something from a horror film, but the idea was that scented herbs could purify the air. Historians still debate whether those masks ever helped at all. But honestly, they look so terrifying that they might have just scared germs away. Later, you help build a tiny shrine in honor of the lost. Flowers, a candle, maybe a carved wooden angel. It's oddly touching. Grief is heavy, but here it's also shared. The village may be poor, but it's not heartless. You're stronger now. Hardened, a little paranoid, sure, but also more human. You've seen the worst and stayed standing. That counts for something. The fever has passed, but something tells you the next challenge is already waiting around the bend. The sun creeps over the hills, and with it comes the steady clink-clink of iron against iron. You wake to find your village buzzing. There's a rumor war is coming. You don't know much about who's fighting who. Whether it's nobles squabbling over land, rival kings claiming the same crown, or a rebellion sparked by yet another unjust tax. Honestly, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that the local lord has sent riders to recruit, and every able-bodied man over 14 is being asked, which really means ordered to show up with whatever weapon they can carry. Sword, axe, sickle. Even a sharpened stick will do. You're not a soldier, not even close. You've barely had time to recover from the recent plague. But now you're told to show up at the castle gates by sunset, or risk being branded a coward, or worse, a deserter. Medieval warfare isn't all shining armor and glory. It's more like a peasant meat grinder. You get handed a padded tunic and maybe a rusted helmet, then shoved into a ragged line of other terrified men who mostly look like bakers, brewers, or shepherds. The knight giving orders is as bored as he is brutal. Pointy end goes in the other man. He sneers, handing you a spear with a crooked tip. Training lasts a full hour, and then you march. For days you trudge through mud sleep on cold grass and live off hard bread and sour ale. Your boots are thin and your toes begin to blister. You ask someone what battle is like. He says, mostly screaming, then bleeding. If you're lucky, you'll pass out before the looting starts. Comforting. Eventually the army camps. You're close now. You can smell it. Campfire smoke, horse dung, steel polish, fear. That night your bunkmate carves a crude cross into a plank of wood. For luck, he says, tucking it in his shirt. At dawn, horns blow. The sky is gray. Wet fog clings to the earth like a shroud. Then everything erupts. It's chaos, louder, messier, more disorienting than anything you've imagined. Arrows rain down like hail. One hits a man next to you in the leg. He howls. Another is pierced clean through the neck. You freeze. Someone slaps your shoulder and shouts, "Move!" So you do. You charge forward, barely understanding who's friend or foe. It's a blur of swinging arms, blood-spattered faces, and splinters of shields. The clang of metal on metal rings in your ears. You swing wildly, mostly just trying not to die. Eventually, your spear breaks and you fall to the ground, crawling through mud and limbs, praying no horse tramples you. Somehow, hours later, the horn sounds again, this time signaling retreat. You're alive, barely. Your tunic is soaked. Not all of it is your blood. Around you lie men you shared bread with just days ago. Some stare blankly at the sky. Others cry for their mothers. You don't know whether to throw up or weep, so you do both. Historians still argue whether medieval battles were decided more by brute strength or dumb luck. Based on your experience, definitely the latter. The next few days are worse. Looting begins. Not glorious treasure seizing, just dirty, exhausted men raiding whatever village was unlucky enough to lie near the battlefield. You refuse to join earning glares. One man pockets a silver spoon and grins like he's won the crown. Eventually you're dismissed. Not rewarded. Just sent home. Like a broken tool returned to the shed. Back in your village, you're different now. Everyone sees it. You flinch at loud noises. You stay quiet during feast days. You sleep lightly, if at all. You've killed. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just survived. Either way, it clings to you. The blacksmith gives you a nod. That's it. No medal, no ceremony, just quiet understanding. And while you're relieved to be back, there's an unease in the air. Borders are always shifting. Kings are always dying. Another lord could demand service at any moment. So you begin to prepare. You practice with a stick behind the barn. You sew a thicker lining into your boots. You ask the healer how to stop bleeding fast. You listen, really listen when elders talk about wars past. And you start carving your own wooden token. A little bird, wings folded. You don't know why. But it feels right. Because in this world, where war is just another storm in the seasons of your life, even a tiny bit of hope can feel like armor. Your body still aches from the war, and your mind even more so. But there's no such thing as downtime in the medieval world. A week after your return, you're summoned again, not for battle, thank goodness, but for something almost as nerve-wracking, a visit to court. Not royal court, mind you. This is your local manorial court, essentially. Judge Judy with more mud and fewer teeth. You've apparently been accused of stealing firewood from the Lord's forest. You didn't, of course. But truth isn't exactly the backbone of medieval justice. The village reeve drags you forward, and you find yourself standing in a drafty hall before the steward, a man with a nose so long It could serve as a sundial. He squints at you like he's solving a riddle. "Swear by the saints that you are innocent," he says. You do. They bring forth a neighbor to testify. You pray it's not old widow Martha. She'd claim you stole her chickens out of spite for that time you bumped her jug at the well. Turns out it's even worse. It's her grandson who has a personal vendetta against your face. There's no jury, just the steward, a stack of ledgers, and a vague sense that fairness is a coin flipped by the rich. Historians still argue whether medieval courts genuinely upheld community norms or were just mechanisms for lords to enforce obedience. You're leaning toward the latter. You're fined 3 pence. It's more than a week's labor. But count yourself lucky. You weren't strapped to a ducking stool or forced to plunge your hand into boiling water to let God decide. That's the thing about justice here, it's not blind. It's deeply nearsighted and very fond of noblemen. Still, court isn't always terrifying. Sometimes it's bizarrely entertaining. A neighbor gets fined for scolding her husband too loudly during Mass. A pig is sentenced to death for eating communion bread. Yes, a pig. The local priest even gives it a last rite. You can't make this stuff up, though someone probably did. With your fine paid and pride bruised, you trudge back home. But this experience makes you wonder how rules are made, or more accurately, who makes them. Most laws are unwritten. Everyone just knows. Cross the Lord, and you'll regret it. Don't poach. Don't curse the weather too loudly near the priest. Definitely don't mention the bishop's wine habits. As you settle into post-war life, you try to keep your head down. You go to church when expected. You nod respectfully at the reeve. You help your neighbor patch her fence just in case she's the one who'll speak for you at your next accusation. Then one day something strange happens. You're chosen to serve on the jury of presentment. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. You basically have to tattle on your neighbors. Has anyone skipped Mass cursed during harvest? Cheated at dice? It's not easy. You don't want to stir trouble, but you also don't want the steward thinking you're hiding something. You realize quickly that community law isn't about justice so much as keeping the peace. You give a few names, small stuff. Everyone does. It's the medieval version of airing dirty laundry, only here, laundry's rarely clean in the first place. Your name appears in the steward's ledger as a reliable villager. You're not sure whether that's a compliment or a threat. Still, this new status has perks. The alewife gives you an extra ladle of mead. The priest smiles at you longer during Sunday sermons. You get first pick of fish at the market. Power, even the tiniest drop of it, changes how people look at you. But you also see the flip side. One day a boy is caught stealing bread. He's hungry, barefoot, and terrified. You know his father was conscripted just like you were, and never came back. The reeve wants to flog him. The steward agrees. And suddenly everyone's looking at you, their trustworthy, reliable villager, to nod along. You don't. You speak up. You offer to pay the baker back out of your own dwindling coins. The reeve sneers, but the steward shrugs. So be it, he mutters. That night, the boy's mother leaves a woven charm at your door. A bird, wings folded. You smile, quietly, softly. Justice may be muddy and fickle in this world, but sometimes, just sometimes, you can nudge it toward mercy. You don't know how far you've walked, but your legs ache in places you didn't even know existed. A head rising from a misty green hill is something straight out of a storybook, or maybe your fever dreams a castle. Your first real one, not a quaint fairy tale castle, mind you. This thing looks like a squatting stone monster, all jagged towers and moss-covered battlements. Crows circle the turrets like they're waiting for someone to keel over. Probably you. The gates creak open, and the stink hits you like a mace to the face. It's a sharp cocktail of horse sweat wet hay, overcooked cabbage, and something suspiciously like open sewer. The moat helps a bit, but mostly as a holding tank for medieval regret. You were promised grandeur. You got mold. Still, it's a marvel. This fortress is the seat of local power, a symbol of feudal might, and a logistical nightmare. Historians still argue whether castles were more about actual defense or just flexing power and terrifying peasants into obedience. Looking up at the murder holes and those smug gargoyles grinning down at you, you lean toward the latter. Inside the great hall looms drafty, dim, and deafening. Boars roast over open flames while dogs skitter across the rush-covered floor, fighting over bones and sometimes slippers. A juggler attempts 3 flaming torches while a drunk noble chants something that might be poetry or a recipe for pigeon stew. You're here delivering a tithe for the village. A few sacks of grain, some preserved apples, and a carved wooden bowl that took 3 weeks to finish. You place it carefully on a velvet-draped table, hoping no one sneezes on it before the steward notices. The lady of the castle descends the staircase, her gown trailing behind like a silken serpent. She's radiant also, probably wearing a mixture of powdered pearls and crushed lead on her cheeks. Beauty, but with consequences. You bow awkwardly. She doesn't notice. She's too busy chastising a page for misplacing her singing falcon. You're given leave to explore briefly. You wander the castle's upper room where sunlight filters through colored glass. Tapestries line the walls depicting everything from saints to sea monsters, all stitched with a mix of reverence and artistic confusion. One unicorn appears to be boxing a monk. No one questions it. Your fingers trail along a table of relics, a supposed splinter from the true cross, a knight's broken sword, and a dusty chessboard. You try to imagine living here cloaked in stone and shadow. No privacy, no plumbing. But at least you'd be dry in the rain. That's when you hear shouting. Not angry shouting, festive shouting. Tournament day. You're swept outside to the courtyard now, bustling with energy. Squires run back and forth, hauling lances, polishing helmets, arguing over which horse bites less. You find a spot by the fence, ducking a jug of spilled mead, and watch as armored men prepare for the joust. It's less graceful than you imagined. There's a lot of clanking, cursing, and horses that look more fed up than fierce. When the first 2 knights charge, it's like watching anvils collide. One is knocked clean off landing in what might have been someone's lunch. Everyone cheers. You laugh despite yourself. It's absurd, brutal, and totally mesmerizing. Between rounds, a jester in motley colors performs tumbling routines and mildly offensive jokes. He points at your tunic, muddy, torn, peasant grade, and calls you a walking compost pile. The crowd laughs. You bow. Why not? You're getting attention from nobles and your compost pile is comfy. Later, you sneak a look inside the armory. Swords of every length line the walls alongside shields bearing dragons, towers, and oddly a turnip. You lift a blade. It's heavy, unwieldy. You suddenly respect knights a little more. A grizzled arms master eyes you. That's not for show, he says, nodding at the sword. That's for keeping your guts inside. You thank him. He chuckles. Next time, bring wine instead of apples. The castle visit ends as the sun sinks. The shadow of the battlements stretches across the courtyard like a closing curtain. You're given a stale biscuit for the road, and one of the stable boys offers you a wink. Maybe it's friendly. Maybe it's a warning. As you walk back toward your village, feet blistered but spirits oddly lifted, you look back. The castle's torches glow like angry eyes in the dusk. It's terrifying. It's beautiful. It's a reminder of everything you're not, but also everything you've survived. And maybe if you're lucky next time you come back, it won't be as a tithing peasant. Maybe you'll be the jester. Your return to the village is quiet, the dusk now slipping into full night. A few flickering torches glow in the windows of cottages as families gather for the final meal of the day. Smoke curls from thatch rooftops carrying the scent of onions and something vaguely fishy, probably eel. Again. You head for your hut, ducking under the low lintel beam you've smacked your head on 4 times already. Inside, it's warmer than you remember someone stoked the fire. That someone is your neighbor's goat, which has invited itself in and is chewing your straw bed like it owns the place. You sigh, too tired to argue with livestock. Dinner tonight is simple black bread that could double as roofing tile, a bowl of pottage made from cabbage leeks, and anything else that hadn't rotted yet, and a cup of cider with the suspicious tang of vinegar. You eat with your fingers, slurping the stew in rhythmic scoops. It's not fancy, but it's warm and filling, and you don't even mind the bit of grit in your teeth anymore. You stretch out beside the hearth using your cloak as a blanket and listen. Through the thin walls, the village hums, babies cry, dogs bark. Someone strums a lyre badly, and from a distance a bell rings. You're not sure what it signifies. Could be curfew, could be a warning, could just mean someone died. Bells are multi-purpose like that. Sleep comes in waves. Not deep, dreamless sleep, more like dozing in bursts between scratching fleas and shifting on the hard floor. You'd think with how often people slept on hay, someone would have invented a pillow by now. They did. Nobles have them. You have a sack of wool and a small rock you call the fancy side. At midnight, you wake briefly. Outside, a thin fog clings to the earth like a damp sheet. You hear hooves, someone galloping hard along the road. You peek through the shutter. A cloaked figure rides past, head low, no torch. Messenger fugitive historians still argue whether nighttime travel was common or just plain foolish. You curl back up, fingers numb, and close your eyes. Morning isn't far. When you next stir, it's still dark, but the kind of dark that hints at dawn. Time for market. You shuffle into your boots, stiff as tree bark, and load your trade items into a sack. 3 eggs, a wedge of waxy cheese, and a wooden comb you carved during a thunderstorm. Outside, other villagers are preparing too. Old Marga is hauling turnips the size of her head. Tom the tanner smells like wet dog and eternal regret. You travel as a group following the muddy path toward the nearest market town. It's a half-day's walk unless someone twists an ankle, which happens often. The sun finally rises. The light is soft golden and briefly makes the medieval countryside look like a painting. You forget for a moment how hard this life is. Then you step in something unpleasant and remember instantly. The town comes into view. Stone walls, narrow gates, and a tangle of buildings so close together, it feels like they were built by drunk carpenters. It smells lively. There's meat roasting, bread baking, and somewhere nearby a tanner boiling animal parts. That one hits hard. The market square is chaos. Traders shout over each other. Chickens escape baskets, and a boy tries to sell you a magic pebble that's definitely just a rock. Still, he's got hustle. You set up near the potter who is mid-argument with a fishmonger about who stole whose ox cart last week. Shoppers eye your eggs, one lady sniffs your cheese and nods with suspicious approval. You manage a few trades, a hunk of salted pork, a flask of diluted wine, and a second-hand wool cap with only 2 holes. You even meet a traveling minstrel who offers you a coin for the comb. He strums a quick tune and thanks a cheeky ballad about a monk and a missing codpiece. You laugh. You needed that. A town crier walks by ringing a bell and shouting news. A noble's wedding, a bishop's visit, a new tax. The crowd groans. You groan louder. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were more about trade or just communal complaining. You vote both. You linger a while, enjoying the energy. A puppet show begins at the corner. Two crudely sewn figures bicker in falsetto, one representing the king, the other a very flatulent dragon. It's surprisingly political. By afternoon, your sack is fuller than it started. You've bartered, gossiped, and avoided pickpockets by looking poorer than you are. A rare medieval survival skill. On the way back, the group is quieter. Tired feet, full bellies. The old cobbler tells a story about a haunted millstone. Someone else hums the tune the minstrel sang. You feel a strange contentment, like you're not just surviving this world, but learning to move with it. The village reappears in the fading light, like it always does, hunched against the landscape like an old friend with bad posture. You're almost home. Your hut creaks softly as you lean against the doorframe, watching the final light drain from the sky. There's a chill in the air tonight, not the biting, cruel cold of deep winter, but the kind that reminds you summer is slipping quietly away. You step inside, setting down your modest haul from market day, a coil of thread, a hunk of hard cheese, and the slightly too large wool cap that keeps sliding over your ears. You're becoming used to this world. You've learned when to speak, and when to stay silent, when to work, and when to disappear for a nap behind the woodshed. You've learned the rhythms, the church bell marking the hours, the priest's droning Latin sermons, which you pretend to understand the echo of hooves or danger on the road. You even nod at the chicken who sleeps by your hearth now. She's still nameless. Feels safer that way. But just as you're settling into your evening routine, you hear a commotion near the village gate. Curious, you step outside, blending into the small crowd gathering in the dusk. Two armored men are dismounting. Not knights, they lack the grandeur. These are lords' men, armed and sunburnt with scrolls and dusty cloaks. One unrolls a parchment and reads aloud a new decree. Increased grain tithe. Mandatory labor for all unmarried villagers over 15. Enforcement begins tomorrow. Groans ripple through the crowd. You swallow hard. You are unmarried and not technically a villager. You exchange looks with the blacksmith's apprentice. He mutters something about running off to the woods and becoming an outlaw. You briefly consider joining him. You head home in silence. There's no protesting it. Not really. Not here. Power comes from above, literally and socially. The nobles rule the church in forces, and you try to avoid drawing attention. By the fire, you run your hands over your arms, trying to banish the cold and the creeping unease. You think about what comes next. You've survived harsh weather, awful food, strange customs, and even latrine duty. But this is the reminder that you are not free, not even close. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly oppressed or just accustomed to obedience. It's a blurry line, one that shifts depending on who's holding the sword. Still, life carries on. It has to. The next morning, you're in a different field. This one belongs to the Manor. A steward watches from horseback as you and others dig irrigation trenches. The work is grueling. Your muscles ache from the very first shovel. No one talks much. You just work and sweat and hope the steward looks away long enough for you to take a breath. You think back to your old life, your real one. It feels dreamlike now. Hot showers, supermarkets, socks that match toothpaste. Oh, toothpaste. You can still taste mint in your memory. You'd give a year of your life for floss. But would you give this up, the honesty of this work, the strange, quiet dignity of building something with your hands, even if it belongs to someone else? Evenings are your only sanctuary. You've started whittling again. That comb from the market was admired by the minstrel so much. He left you with a broken harp string, which now serves as your most valuable tool. You carve animals, a fox, a bird, a bear that looks more like a pig. The children love them. You gift one to a girl who hasn't smiled since her brother left for the abbey. In that moment, you feel it a flicker of belonging. Not as a tourist, not as a time-lost outsider, but as a person. A person who learned how to sleep on straw, how to knead dough without yeast, how to feign reverence during Mass, and how to stitch a torn tunic with twine and a fishbone. You even managed to survive your first fever 3 days of hallucinations and garlic poultices. A healer whispered prayers in Latin while waving a dried toad over your chest. You're still not sure what cured you, but you're grateful. Though the toad may still be under your pillow, you try not to check. Tonight, the stars are brilliant. No city lights to dim them. The sky here is like black velvet scattered with crushed ice. You lie back in the grass outside your hut, watching them shimmer. A shooting star blazes past. You whisper a wish, to go home, to stay. You don't answer it. Instead, you close your eyes. Let the air cool your skin. Let your thoughts slow. Let the world in all its smoke and sweat and soft night breezes hold you in place. And now let's drift slowly down. Wind down 300 words. Your breath grows slower. The weight of the day of all the digging and trading and walking and wondering. It lifts like a cloak shrugged from your shoulders. Your body remembers the cool touch of grass beneath you, the crickets humming nearby, the faint creak of the thatched roof above. You remember the way the fire cracked last night, how the shadows danced like old stories retold in silent gestures. And somewhere far away, so far, it's almost forgotten, you remember your own bed, your real pillow, the hum of a refrigerator, the buzz of your phone. But that world is fading now. Not gone. Just paused. Because right here in this moment, you belong. You belong to a world lit by torches, cooled by rivers, and softened by the laughter of tired people who carry on anyway. Your breath is steady now. You can hear it. In, out. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift. You've done well. You've survived this impossible place with wit, humor, and a surprising tolerance for cabbage-based meals. You are safe, you are warm, and you are exactly where you need to be. So go ahead, sleep. Let the stars keep watch. Let the past hold you just a little longer. And when you wake, whether in this time or your own, you'll carry a piece of this story with you. Always, good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.